I woke up with sand in my mouth and the sun burning my back, torn apart by the rocks. The waves licked my feet while I tried to remember how I had gotten here. My ship, the Santa Helena, had wrecked during the most violent storm I had seen in my 20 years of sailing. I remembered the mast snapping like a toothpick, and then nothing more until now. I struggled to my feet and looked around, searching for signs of other survivors. But the beach was empty, except for pieces of wood that the waves brought and carried away. The island looked like a tropical paradise, with limestone cliffs covered in thick vegetation and crystalline turquoise water. If I weren't half dead, I would have appreciated the beauty of the place. I dragged myself toward the shade of some palm trees when I saw them. But suddenly my eyes saw something that my brain couldn't process. At first I thought I was hallucinating from dehydration. They were women, or so it seemed from afar. But as they approached, I noticed something was terribly wrong or wonderfully different, depending on how you looked at it. They had humanoid bodies but covered in short fur with tiger patterns, cat ears on top of their heads, long striped tails that moved independently, and faces that were an impossible mix between human and feline. They surrounded me with spears made of bone, and one of them, who seemed to be the leader by her more elaborate ornaments, approached and sniffed me. Literally sniffed me like a cat, studying something new. Then she turned to the others and meowed something in a language that sounded like a mix of purrs and words. Ana redsich, volasis, dia direnesetamt. They all fell to their knees at the same time. I didn't understand what was happening, but the felines lifted me with extreme care, as if I were made of glass, and carried me on a kind of improvised stretcher toward the interior of the island. During the journey, they kept looking at each other and whispering in their strange language, and occasionally one would approach to touch me with reverence, then quickly retreat. The village was ingeniously built in the giant trees that dominated that part of the island. Rope bridges connected platforms where there were huts made of wood and woven leaves. The whole place smelled of sea, tropical fruits, and something feline that I couldn't exactly describe. They took me to the largest platform where an older feline waited. Her fur was white with gray stripes, and her green eyes studied me intensely before speaking in rudimentary but understandable Spanish. "You be the one who comes from the sea," she said, with a voice that was half purr, half human words. "I'm just a castaway," I replied, confused. She shook her head and pointed to some paintings on the wooden walls. They showed a man emerging from the ocean, while feline creatures waited for him on the beach. The similarity to what had just happened to me was unsettling. Ancient prophecies say when earth shake and sky cry fire, the Savior come from sea to protect daughters of moon. "I think there's a misunderstanding," I started to say, but she interrupted me. "No misunderstanding. You have Mark." She pointed to my shoulder where I had a tiger tattoo I had gotten years ago in Singapore during a drunken night. For them, it was definitive proof. They treated my wounds with herbs that burned, but healed quickly, and fed me raw fish that, to my surprise, was delicious when they prepared it. The elderly feline, whose name was Rayaka, explained more about her people, while the young warriors watched me from the shadows. We be last of our species. Live here for 1,000 moons, waiting for savior. Our island be dying slowly. Black water, come from center. Kill fish, make trees sick. She showed me toward the center of the island where I could indeed see an area where the vegetation was brown and withered, spreading like an infection. Ancient legends say only the one who comes from sea can enter Darkheart and clean it. We not able to approach without getting sick. But I don't have special powers, I protested. I'm just an ordinary sailor. A young feline approached then. She was different from the others. Her fur was black with barely visible stripes, and her eyes were an impossible blue. She introduced herself in better Spanish than Rayaka. My name is Shadow. I learned human language from books that sometimes wash up on beach. I know you don't believe your savior, but
What if I refuse?
prophecy doesn't speak of magic powers. It speaks of courage and sacrifice. And what happens if I leave? If I'm not your savior? The silence was heavy before Rayaka answered. If savior reject destiny, daughters of moon disappear before next full moon. That's what prophecy says. Only 12 sons remain. Shadow became my guide and translator while I explored the island trying to understand what was really happening. She showed me they weren't savages, but had a complex culture, with art, music made with bone and shell instruments, and a writing system that combined pictograms with claw marks. How many are there? I asked while watching the cubs playing. There remain 53 of us. No males for 3 generations. How? Ancient curse or blessing, depends how you see it. We can reproduce without males, but each generation we are fewer and weaker. I am from last generation, and probably won't be able to have offspring. There was sadness in her voice that hurt to hear. While we walked, she showed me the wonders of her world. Hidden waterfalls where they bathed, caves with crystals that glowed in the dark, trees with fruits that existed nowhere else. Your world is beautiful, I admitted. Was beautiful. Look. She took me to the edge of the dead zone. The contrast was brutal. On one side, lush vegetation and life. On the other, death and rot. The smell was nauseating, and I could see black liquid bubbling from cracks in the ground. Started 6 moons ago. Each day grows more. We calculate in 12 days we'll reach village. Have you tried to investigate what causes it? Those who get too close sicken and die in days. Only Savior can enter according to prophecy. I looked toward the center of the dead zone where the source seemed to be. There was something there, a structure that didn't look natural. Against Rayaka's pleas, I decided to get closer to the dead zone. If I was going to help them, I needed to understand what I was facing. Shadow insisted on accompanying me as far as it was safe for her. As we approached, I found something disturbing. Among the dead vegetation were rusted metal remains and what appeared to be old scientific equipment. I even found part of a sign in English that read, Ancient Zeta, Biological Research. What is biological research? Shadow asked, reading over my shoulder. Experiments with life. This isn't natural. Someone caused this. My mind started connecting the dots. A secret research station on a remote island. Biological experiments, hybrid beings between humans and animals. The daughters of the moon weren't a natural species, but the result of genetic experimentation. Shadow, how far back do your oldest stories go? Grandmother of Rayaka was first mother. She'd wake up one day on beach with no memories of before. Everything fit. Some kind of genetic experimentation had created these creatures probably about 100 years ago, and something had gone wrong with the facility causing leaks of whatever they were developing. I didn't tell them my suspicions yet. How could I explain that they were probably the result of human experiments? That their savior prophecy could be distorted memories of their creators? That night, while I watched them perform a ritual dance under the full moon, I realized that their origin didn't matter. They were conscious beings with their own culture and deserved to live. I couldn't sleep thinking about everything I had discovered. Shadow came to see me on the platform they had assigned me. "You're worried?" It wasn't a question. "I think I can help, but it's dangerous. And I'm no savior, just a man who knows a bit about chemistry and mechanics." She sat beside me with fluid movements, typically feline, and her tail wrapped around her legs. "You know what I think? I think prophecy isn't magic. I think ancestors knew that someday someone would come from the outside world who would understand what we cannot. You're smarter than you appear." All felines are smart. We just pretend not to be. So prey will trust us. There was humor in her voice, but also truth. If I enter that zone and don't survive, what will you do? Die with dignity knowing Savior tried. Better than waiting for slow death. Her pragmatism surprised me and made me respect her more. I told her my suspicions about their species' origin, and to my surprise, she wasn't upset. Does that change anything? We're still us. We still want to live. She was completely right. That night, I decided that the next day, I would enter the dead zone. Not because I was a prophesied savior, but because it was the right thing to do. Shadow purred softly beside me until I fell asleep. It was the most comforting sound I had heard in years. The entire village gathered for my departure to the Dark Heart. They had prepared me with rituals I didn't understand but were clearly important to them. They painted my skin with symbols that, according to Rayaka, would protect me, though I suspected it was more to give them hope than for any real effect. Brazen Diasive. I had built a rudimentary mask with cloth and charcoal that I hoped would protect me from toxic gases. I also carried a bag of lime I had found on the beach, remembering from my days in the merchant marine that it could neutralize certain chemicals. "If I don't return in 2 days, don't send anyone after me," I told Shadow. "You'll return. You have to." There was something in her eyes that wasn't just hope for her people. I realized she had developed feelings for me, which complicated everything infinitely. "Shadow, don't say anything. Just come back." I walked toward the dead zone while 53 pairs of feline eyes watched me. The responsibility weighed more than any burden I had carried in my life. It wasn't just their lives, but their hope I was carrying. The first meters in the dead zone were bearable, but the smell quickly worsened. The mask helped little, and my eyes watered from the vapors. I followed the trail of rusted metal and abandoned equipment toward what seemed to be the epicenter. What I found chilled my blood more than any storm at sea. In the center of the dead zone, there was a concrete bunker, partially collapsed. Through the cracks came the black liquid that had been poisoning the island. I found a partially blocked entrance and crawled inside. The interior was a nightmare of an abandoned laboratory. Broken tanks with remains of what appeared to be specimens. computers destroyed by decades of humidity, and partially legible documents scattered everywhere. One caught my attention. Project Chimera, Phase 3, successful hybrids. There were photos. The first daughters of the moon in glass tanks, with scientists posing proudly beside them. The date was 1954. I kept reading fragments, and the story became darker. They had created these creatures as super soldiers for a war that never came. When the project was canceled, they decided to eliminate the specimens, but something went wrong. A partially burned personal diary told the rest. The creatures escaped. The scientists tried to activate an elimination protocol that would release toxins, but the system failed and kept dripping slowly. The author died before being able to deactivate it. I found the source, a massive tank in the bunker's basement, corroded, but still releasing its poisonous contents. There was a control panel miraculously intact, protected in an airtight box. The emergency instructions were taped to the side, faded but readable. With trembling hands, I followed the emergency shutdown procedure. Valve A, close. Switch B, turn off. Button C, hold down for 30 seconds. The system died with a mechanical sigh. But closing the leak wasn't enough. The poison already in the soil would keep spreading unless... I remembered something from my days studying in the Navy about bioremediation. The lime I had brought could partially neutralize the chemicals, but I needed more, much more. Then I saw the barrels, dozens of barrels with the emergency neutralizer on the bunker walls. The problem was, they had been there for 70 years. Most were corroded, but some at the back looked intact. I spent hours dragging them out of the bunker and opening them. The white powder inside seemed still viable. I worked until the sun set, spreading the neutralizer in concentric circles from the center outward. It was exhausting work, and my hands were bleeding from handling the rusted barrels, but I continued. If the prophecy said the Savior would come from the sea to save them, then I would do everything possible to fulfill it, real or not. To my amazement and relief, it worked. Where the powder touched the contaminated soil, the black turned gray, and then normal brown. It wouldn't revive the dead plants immediately, but it would stop the spread, and eventually, nature would recover. When I finally left the dead zone, staggering from exhaustion, I found them waiting at the edge, all of them. Even the cubs that should have been sleeping. Shadow ran toward me before I collapsed. You did it. The black is stopping. We can smell it. The celebrations lasted all night, but I slept through most of it, exhausted on the platform while Shadow watched over my sleep. When I woke up, Ryaka was waiting with the Council of Elders. I told them everything I had discovered, using Shadow as a translator for the complex details. I explained that they weren't creatures of legend, but the result of human science, that their prophecy probably came from distorted memories of the original scientists. I expected them to feel betrayed or furious, but their reaction surprised me. So humans created us, said Ryaka thoughtfully. And humans saved us. Prophecy is still true, but I'm not special. Anyone with basic knowledge could have done what I did. But only you came. Only you did it. That makes you savior. I couldn't argue with that logic. Shadow added something that left me speechless. Besides, prophecy has second part we didn't tell you. Second part? Ryaka nodded and recited, Savior must choose. Return to the sea from whence he came, or stay and be father of new era. Father of new era? Without males, we disappear in few generations. But if Savior chooses to stay, the implication was clear and left me breathless. They wanted me to stay not just as Savior, but as breeder. The idea was so absurd I almost laughed, but I saw their serious and hopeful faces.
We must protect the sacred grove.
It's biologically impossible. We're different species. Shadow shook her head and showed me more documents they had saved from the bunker. Scientists made us genetically compatible with humans. It was part of the design, in case they needed more specimens. Two days later, while helping clean the last remnants of contamination, I saw a ship on the horizon. My fire signal had worked, or it was simply coincidence, but there it was, my rescue, my return to civilization. The Daughters of the Moon saw it too. They said nothing, but I could feel the tension in the air. Shadow had been distant since the revelation about the second part of the prophecy, actively avoiding me. I found her in her favorite place, a cave behind the waterfall, where she went to think. "The ship is coming for you," she said without looking at me. "I haven't decided anything yet. What's there to decide? You're human, you belong with humans. And don't you deserve a chance to survive?" Finally, she looked at me, and there were tears in her impossibly blue eyes. "Not at the cost of your freedom. You saved Island. You fulfilled prophecy. You owe nothing more. What if I want to stay not out of duty, but by my own choice? Don't be foolish. Why would you want to live on a primitive island with creatures that aren't even truly natural?" Because in 1 week here, I've felt more useful and needed than in 30 years in the outside world. Because you see me as a hero, not for what I represent, but for what I did. And because I stopped, unsure whether to continue. Because what? Because you matter to me, Shadow, more than I should. The ship anchored in the bay and lowered a boat with 3 sailors. I watched them from the cliffs, while Ryaka and the council waited for my decision. They weren't pressuring, but I could feel the weight of their hopes. I went down to the beach alone. The sailors recognized me immediately. "Marcus, my God, you're alive. The whole company gave you up for dead. We've been searching for survivors for weeks. Are there others?" 2, the cook and the boatswain. The others, he shook his head. 22 good men lost to a storm. I looked toward the jungle where I knew 53 pairs of eyes were watching me, hidden. "I need to collect some things. Can you wait an hour?" "Of course, take your time." I climbed back to the village where everyone waited in silence. I went to my platform and collected the diary I had been writing about everything that had happened. Then I approached Ryaka. "I need you to promise me something. Whatever Savior asks. If I stay, it will be as an equal, not as a prisoner or stud. I'll help preserve your species, but in my way, with respect and dignity for all. You're staying?" The hope in her voice was palpable. "I need to send a message with the ship. Tell my family I'm well, but that I found something here. Then yes, I'm staying." The jubilation was immediate but quiet, aware that the sailors could hear. Shadow hugged me, her purr vibrating against my chest.
I'm here now.
I went back down to the beach with my diary wrapped in waterproof cloth. I handed it to the boat captain. "I need you to deliver this to the Oriental Shipping Company in Hong Kong. It's important. Aren't you coming with us? I found something here, a purpose. There are local survivors who need help. Native people who lost everything in an ecological disaster. I'm going to stay and help them rebuild." They looked at me like I was crazy. Marcus, there's civilization, your family, your life. My life is here now. Tell them I died in the shipwreck if you prefer. It'll be easier for everyone. The captain studied me for a long time, and then nodded. If it's your decision, do you need supplies, medicine, tools? Everything you can leave will be welcome. They left me 2 boxes of medical supplies, basic tools, and some books they had. As the ship sailed away, I wondered if I had made the right decision. Then I felt a furry hand take mine. Shadow was by my side. You won't regret it, she promised. I know. And I did know. Because, for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I needed to be. My life on the island took a rhythm I never expected, but that felt right. In the mornings, I taught the young ones to read the books we had saved from the bunker, and those the ship left. In the afternoons, I worked with the hunters improving their fishing techniques and basic agriculture. In the evenings, I documented their culture, their language, their stories. The relationship with Shadow evolved naturally. It wasn't forced or rushed. The physical differences were obvious, but not insurmountable. Her intelligence, humor, and loyalty made her more human than many humans I had known. When we finally united as a couple, it was with the blessing of the whole village and a ceremony that mixed their traditions with the few I remembered from my world. Do you think it will work? She asked me one night while we watched the stars from the highest platform. The preserving our species thing? The lab documents suggest yes. But even if not, we'll have built something here. A community, a family, a home. She purred against my shoulder and her tail wrapped around my waist had become as natural as breathing. Rayaka had taught me that the prophecy had a third part they never mentioned. The Savior will transform and be transformed. I didn't understand until I saw myself reflected in the water one morning. I hadn't changed physically, but something in my eyes was different. Wilder, freer, more alive. The daughters of the moon had saved me as much as I had saved them. I woke to the sound that had changed everything. The cry of a baby. But not just any cry, but one that mixed the feline meow with human crying. Shadow held our daughter, the first of the new era, as they called her. She was perfect in her impossibility. Skin, with a soft black fur barely visible, ears slightly pointed but not completely feline. Blue eyes like her mother but round like mine. And a small tail that moved when she was happy. She's beautiful, I whispered. She's hope, Shadow corrected. It wasn't a harem, but an extended family where everyone took care of everyone. The diary I sent with the ship was published as fiction. Chronicles of the Lost Island became a bestseller, and no one suspected it was real. Better that way. This paradise needed to remain hidden. The dead zone had recovered completely, and where there was once poison, now grew the most beautiful flowers on the island. Sometimes, I took my daughter there and told her the story of how her father, the Savior, had cleaned the darkness, although to her, I was simply Dad. Do you regret it? Rayaka asked me in her increasingly better Spanish while we watched the new generation play. I looked at my impossible family, my improbable home, my unthinkable life, and smiled. Never. Because sometimes, shipwrecking isn't getting lost, but finding yourself exactly where destiny, prophecy, or simple chance wanted you to be. And sometimes, just sometimes, the castaway discovers he wasn't sailing toward any port, but fleeing from an empty life, toward something extraordinary that was waiting for him on an island that doesn't appear on any map. The daughters of the moon are no longer doomed. The new era has begun. And I, Marcus the sailor, Marcus the castaway, Marcus the savior, am finally home.